The American Civil War was fought between 1861 to 18... The American Civil War was fought between 1861 to 1865 between the North, the Union, and the South, the Confederacy. The war began in April of 1861 at Fort Sumter. That's when the Confederates took over what was a Union fort. The war was on. The South had a general named Robert E. Lee, while the North fluctuated between many different generals before finally deciding on General Ulysses S. Grant. The early part of the war showed battling that took place in Virginia in places such as Bull Run. The North struggled early on in the war with their Peninsular Campaign. That was a campaign to go from Washington all the way to Richmond, Virginia, which was the capital of Jefferson Davis's Confederacy. The longer the war went on, the better it was for the North. That was because they had a blockade known as the Anaconda Plan, where the South couldn't sell their cotton to Europe. Eventually, Europe stopped supporting the Confederacy, mostly because of the Emancipation Proclamation. Issued after the bloodiest single day in the history of the United States at the Battle of Antietam, the Emancipation Proclamation freed no slaves actually, but in theory, it freed a lot of them. That's because Abraham Lincoln said that all slaves would be free in places of rebellion. That meant that now the Civil War was about slavery. England would not support slavery, and therefore they stayed out of the war. Most famously, the turning point of the Civil War took place at the Battle of Gettysburg, where General Lee moved into the North into Pennsylvania. However, after Pickett's charge failed, the Union would go on the offensive. Regarding African Americans, you would start to see the beginning of African American regiments, such as the Massachusetts 54th. Black soldiers fought valiantly during the Civil War. Still, the North couldn't get a decisive victory until 1865. That's when General Ulysses S. Grant traveled through Virginia and chased down Robert E. Lee in places such as the Battle of the Wilderness and Spotsylvania. Ultimately, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in April of 1865. The war wasn't without its resistance. There were the Copperheads in the Midwest led by Clement Vallandigham, who were against Lincoln's war. In addition, Lincoln did not have the support of all citizens in the North. In New York City, people protested the draft. That's because the Draft Act said that you could pay $300 to get out of it. People said it was a rich man's war, but a poor man's fight. In New York City in 1863, there were the horrible New York City draft riots. Lincoln gained re-election in 1864. However, he would be assassinated by John Wilkes Booth in 1865. After that, Andrew Johnson took over as President of the United States and would have to guide the country during Reconstruction.